All right. Welcome to Protect Your Future. What's on the horizon? I am here with my good friend in Predator mode, Sandra Stibbards, the amazing Sandra Stibbards. Thanks for coming on and talking with me. It's always fun to catch up with my friend.
Oh, it's so good to be here. We always have such a good time when we're talking. So this is going to be fun again.
No matter what the topic is, we do have to laugh. And so to jump right into it, we started talking about, what do you want to talk about? Let's talk about something. We got to get out there and start making people aware. And we started talking about TikTok and how the administration is still trying to push TikTok out because it's not a U.S. company and so on and so forth, and all their data compromising things that they do. And we're starting to see a kind of a dwindling down of where people are doing things on social media. And we were reminiscing because we're both old enough to know the early social media platforms that were out there and how people used to do nefarious things on there. They used to sell drugs on Facebook, or they used to, have pictures of them doing drugs or selling guns or something. And now we're just not finding them in as much as we are. Both you and I are quite do a lot of social media investigations, and the mainstream social media networks are really doing a lot to police their own kind of backyard, if you will. What do you think about that? Is that accurate, or are we seeing a shift?
Yeah, I think that you've hit the nail on the head, actually, especially with the big topic of TikTok right now. I mean, I think a few years ago they were trying to shut it down, and then I'm not sure how it played out, but I think an American company came in and bought them, but the Chinese still have access to it because it's a Chinese platform. So yeah, with just that initial piece, watching how Twitter is kind of changed a little bit, where you're talking about, yeah, we're not seeing those ridiculous posts with them holding their guns after they had a gang shooting and things like that. Facebook has gotten real limiting on making sure that posts are not offensive. Instagram has pretty much stopped letting people do those sexy videos quite so much. So I do think that you're right on the shift. The only one that I've seen on all the platforms that hasn't shifted, that's really active. Now there's going to
Yeah.
be lots out there that are, haven't shifted, but in the big ones, Reddit is the one that I'm
Oh,
seeing is still really active in the nefarious groups, the adult groups, because I've had cases that crossed right into them. And
interesting.
yeah, all of a sudden I'm having to look at these really icky photos that I don't want to see and have to provide them in, my investigative reports. But yeah, outside of them, I would say that you're hitting the nail on the head, that they really have shifted to try and make sure that the content is limited on offensiveness, if that's the PC word, or things of concern. Yeah.
Yeah, when I was at Facebook, there was a lot of work happening trying to make things more kind of PG, and they strayed into that PG-13, and they're trying to bring it all back. I don't know if it's a Disneyfication of social media or what, but I think that's where the money is, and they realize that, especially if they become mainstream and much more used by and much more common. Snapchat's interesting.
Mhm.
That probably is still very much well used. Do you find that as an investigative tool, or a tool that you'll use to go on and identify bad deeds, or do you use it as just to identify a subject?
Snapchat has been one of the least used by me because it is so limited
Yeah,
on access to people's profiles. Unless they make their profile public, they have really locked down that platform. So even when I'm doing some of my Google dorking and I do a site search, I can't pick up anything, even if I have a username on somebody. So, basic site searching, I think you know what I'm talking about for those people that might not be familiar. It's just an advanced operator where I put in maybe the username that I'm looking at, and I put that in quotation marks, and then I follow it with a space and put SITE colon, and then I might put in, which one were we talking about a minute ago? Facebook or
Snapchat.
Snapchat. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
going to do site colon snapchat.com. So it's only going to look for that username on that platform. And I find Snapchat is completely locked down. I don't get
Yeah.
any hits for it. It's really kind of interesting. Meanwhile, the exact opposite happens when I go to a platform like Reddit
Mm.
or even LinkedIn, which is a professional, a professional profile, social media kind of business platform, right? So, Snapchat is a tough one, but
Mhm.
TikTok isn't, and Facebook isn't, except for when people are keeping it private.
Are you find TikTok that they're using their real names, or do you have to go figure out what their common username is and then you kind of back into it that way?
I find that everybody is using a username that has nothing to do with them. Some of them might have like a first name and then some weird letters or numbers after it. I have friends that use it for business and they reference them as private investigators or PIs, but they're not using the real names on there.
Right.
So yeah, you are absolutely right. I have to actually go, once I have found a profile, if I have a username on someone, then I have to figure out who they are in there and identify them. So people are pretty good about locking themselves down in TikTok.
Yeah, that's good because it's hugely popular, right?
Mhm.
I still find that Facebook and Instagram are still used, but I use them more and more for identifying subjects and that give me their Christmas picture and sometimes heavier users are showing where they are, what they're doing with more frequency, and that's helpful. Or they talk about where they're working, something like that. Connections is great. Facebook, everybody may have a Facebook account. They may not post on it, but they're probably connecting with friends and family and relatives and doing the my dad used to do it where he had like nothing on his profile and then he'd
Yeah.
like cyber stalk everybody and then call you and say, hey, I just noticed you got back from this or that. I'm like, Dad, why did he just like the picture?
I
Yeah,
love that. That's
yeah,
so funny. But you're right, because Facebook is still relevant for us as investigators for
yeah,
exactly what you're talking about. One of the things that is helpful, even when they're not showing their friends, if you go into pictures, if they're
yeah.
showing any pictures, I'll start going through the pictures to see who's written notes on it. Because sometimes you'll find the relatives and then you find your subject there and you can connect the spouse or the boyfriend or girlfriend. And then you suddenly find the son and the aunt and the uncle. And yet all of a sudden you're collecting it all, but it's only because you have to do that little bit of digging. But it
Yeah.
is still relevant in that aspect.
And it's still very much manual. I know Scope Now, you and I both use them, talk about them. I know
Mhm.
Scope Now does a lot of work to try and connect you with associates and try and draw those internet, first party, second party connections. But it still does take an investigator going in there, looking for them, confirming it's them.
Yeah.
But we still have to explain this to a lot of people who are requesting us to do these searches. Our attorney partners or whatever. They think, well, just go on Facebook and
Yeah.
they're going to tell you everything that they're doing, and it's like, yeah, no, not anymore. It's
Mm-mm.
Snapchat or some disappearing messages. I mean, I was listening to the news and they were talking about Sam Bankman-Feld, I think SBF from the crypto
FTX, the FTX
FTX,
crypto.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah, the crypto company that has gone under, or I guess isn't just in bankruptcy, but um, the court ordered him not to use Signal recently because,
Really? Because the
yeah, the
end-to-end
disappearing
encryption.
messages. It's it, yeah, and it's encrypted, and he's not supposed to be communicating like that. Disappeared messages, so on.
Well, I bet you he's
Yeah,
on Wicker then, because
well, that's the thing. Yeah, there are just
Wicker
so
is
many.
disappearing messages,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. If you
So,
if you look through the App Store or your Google Play Store or whatever, you're gonna find there's probably dozens, if not hundreds, of these things now. And I'm always curious, like who really put that app out there?
yeah.
Where
Well,
did that really come from?
I think Signal is the good one for those of us that are,
Yeah,
as investigators, we're trying to conceal the information we're providing to each other. We want to keep it limited so it doesn't get out in the mainstream. Signal is the way to go because it is end-to-end encryption. But I learned from a guy that basically is an NSA security guy. He was explaining to me they're actually using the old phone network, which keeps the information secure. Unlike all the other ones, like, WhatsApp is still end-to-end encryption, but
yeah,
Facebook owns it. So,
yeah,
uh, I wonder if things can be accessible that way. And then we see other ones. I mean, I always tell everybody, don't use Telegram just because we can get everything off of Telegram. I don't know if people know that, but
Well,
they say
let's
it's
talk about
secure.
that. Santa, tell
Yeah.
us, what do you like about it? Well, first, just briefly, what is Telegram, so people who don't know, and then what do you like about it as an investigator?
Telegram is another a chat app. So it's just like having Signal or WhatsApp or even Wicker. The difference with Telegram is, for example, Scope Now will actually pick up on them. They will find the profile of a person on Telegram and we will learn about them, but they won't pick up something like Signal or WhatsApp because those are under the radar and that information is not available. So right. Telegram is good for us as investigators because we can develop information on a person through their profile because it's not hard to get. However, I like using either Signal or WhatsApp because they're end-to-end encryption. The information is secure, especially on Signal. And the nice thing about Signal and WhatsApp, they have a browser version. So if I needed to send you a document, right, I could actually do it on my Signal browser app and send you over that PDF. And, I can always encrypt the document and then text you the password from a separate device. And, so I can get you that document without being concerned that it's going to be intercepted. So that's why I like those ones. Yeah. So as investigators, we want to secure our stuff. And then as investigators, we want the open platforms like Telegram. I feel bad for people that are on there, but it's been a very vulnerable app as well. I mean, it's had to have patches and it's invasive on people's contact lists. So I just be very careful with that one.
I don't know if you follow, there's an organization called Bellingcat in the UK.
Yes, they actually included me in their top 5 OSINT people in an article a few years ago. And I wrote them and thanked them for that. I was like, wow, that is so cool. But they are so interesting, aren't they?
They are. And they're always using new tools and they talk a lot about Telegram. I recommend people sign up for their newsletter. They have a training platform too. So for folks who are looking for training, that's a good way to do it too. But they're always talking about how they exploited things. In fact, one of the things they were just talking about was, or the latest thing that I saw that they were talking about was nuclear secrets being released by U.S. service people, specifically through the flashcard apps. And I'm not telling you anything that wasn't widely reported by news media, but and I don't really, I listened to their report and looked at what they were talking about. I really don't think those are nuclear secrets, by the way, but it's not stuff that you just want anybody to know. Yeah.
I mean, it's worth looking into to just check it out.
Yeah. But I mean, for the OSINT investigator like us, knowing that information can be located on flashcard apps is pretty interesting. I didn't even know you could search. Well, I guess, I mean, you could search anything, any database through Google Dorking. So
absolutely. And that's what I always recommend. Do your site search. That's what I recommend because going to a platform, like I can't look for that much if I go to LinkedIn, for example. It's not an open search platform. You're looking for people or companies because it's a business platform. But if I am in my search engine and I search keywords for the site and do site:linkedin.com, it will find everything that hits on those keywords. Mm-hmm. So you do your site search instead of doing the platform search, and it makes it so much more thorough. It's amazing. I love doing that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's really, and so many of these platforms they're web-based, but they are becoming more like phone-based too, which is interesting. Have you, I'll just name off a couple of ones like Clubhouse or social networks, Reddit. I think we talked about Reddit just briefly earlier. Discord's another one. Are you finding the need to be on those, or are those coming up just for subject identification?
No, actually, I was actually kind of pushed on to Discord. I've been told about it for years and years, and I used it to find information on people. But when I started doing a lot more of these cybersecurity conferences, when I would speak at these things, it's been the last few years. My buddy, Lee McWhorter, was the one that said, Sandra, for Texas Cyber and for, what was the other one? There's another one.
RSA.
It might be RSA. He got me on there. He said, I need you on Discord because we're talking about all the different chats. And because, we had a dark arts village that we were, part of, a red team village. So dark arts was part of RSA. Yeah. So you're right about that. And then the red team village, we were at DEF CON. And then we have another CTF thing that we're doing at Texas Cyber. So we had these 3 conferences where we were doing different villages and things, and so he needed me on there so I could see what activity was going on with the conferences. So Discord is really a huge platform for people to communicate as teams and groups about whatever they're trying to accomplish, and in our world it was cybersecurity. But the other one you brought up was Clubhouse. That was an interesting one that for me it's still out there, I guess, but it kind of came and went for me very quickly. Somebody told me when it first came out, it was only on iPhone. And then it eventually opened up to Androids as well, but it was still by invite only. And you were right, it was by phone number only. Yeah. And so I don't know where that platform has gone because I didn't find it to be a useful tool and I didn't get onto it.
Yeah, you're not saving or sharing information outside of real time, and it's a voice app, so it doesn't really exist other than you create a profile. There's nothing really to search for, and so I guess if you're looking for somebody who's talking about this is pretending to be something they're not, I guess, that they would include in their profile. One of the challenges that I have that I'm curious if you have a solve for is foreign language apps like VK, or even tweets or other messages that are in another language. Some of them have that little translate this message thing, which is great, very helpful, and you can translate it and make sure that is or isn't what you're trying to follow. But I didn't know if do you search on VK at all, or do you
oh yeah,
are you worried about that?
It's a huge platform.
It is, yeah.
And this is what I recommend to everybody, because what I will do is, and I do a variety of things when it comes to dealing with people that speak another language. I'll always search in my own language first just to make it easier. But what I'll then do is do the Google Translate or Babbel Translate, and then I'll search the same keywords that I want to find in their language, and then always do a site search. Again, I'm not going to the platform. I'm always going to do a site search because I'm going to get the best information doing that. The other thing that I do when it comes to a language thing, I will actually turn my VPN on to the country or the city and country of where the person is supposedly located. Then, of course, I will search in their language, whatever keywords, and then search in my language and do translates back and forth. But so I'm utilizing the VPN to put me actually in that country. And so, but I always tell people when you do that, make sure you're searching in their language. So as you said, use a translator, but be careful, because I learned this in a class that everybody has their tweaks in their languages. And there was a certain way for me to search. I was searching the Spanish language, and it was just a sample search on El Chapo, and I was using the word drug lord. When you do it in English, you can do drug and then lord, and then you can also put them together, and we'll find articles in English that match that. However, when you go to translate it into Spanish, you got to make sure you do it the correct way, because if you do drug lord as 2 separate words, it's not anything that has to do with being a drug lord. You have to actually put the words together as one word. So I learned that, and I've tried to instill that in everybody. So when you're doing your keyword searches, make sure you're using the proper words. And like you said, slang as well, because they're going to have their dialects and everything, different things in different countries. So know what you're looking for and how you look for it. But yeah, language is a really important piece. And there are a lot of platforms for different countries.
And that's why the good ad is, I think, to remember your VPN can be country or location based, and you should be switching that. Yeah. Do you, just throw it out there. Do you recommend? I use Pia, but I also have a Proton Mail VPN. Do you have a recommendation on VPNs?
In my world, I use 2 different ones. I have NordVPN, which is the most popular one, I believe, in the investigations world because they're not US based.
Mhm.
But for me, the other one is called Hide My Ass. And
Okay.
yes, that actually is the name. And the reason I use Hide My Ass is because for my investigations, they have almost 300 different locations throughout the world. So they're giving me almost every country in the world and a whole bunch of different cities and states or cities and provinces, in North America. And so they give me so many options. And the best thing to do when you're doing an investigation is put yourself in the locations that your target is affiliated with. So if you have a target that is, it may be living in Miami, but is affiliated with Singapore and New Delhi and, Hong Kong, you're going to want to put yourself in each of those locations. So Hide My Ass is the one that gives me the opportunity, the most freedom to put me all over the world. Nord is the one that's not based here. And for me, it makes no difference, but those two are my favorites.
Okay. That's great ad. I know that's a little bit out of the topic, but do you find that some of these social media apps will sense that you're using a VPN and they'll minimize the amount of information you can get?
I have not been knocked out of any of the platforms when I'm using my VPN. I always have it turned on. But it's interesting that you bring that up because if I go to other different web-based sites, I have been kicked out. I'm like, it's stopped and blocked going in because they can recognize it. But most platforms, especially social media, they don't watch for that. But they will notice if, like, say I've got myself put in Germany, all of a sudden the platform is in, their language, and it's Deutsch, and it's like, okay, so they pick up on that.
You got to use your translate apps too. Google Translate, one of the best.
I love it. It's not a perfect translation, but it's a good translation. It's good enough, to get us away with what we need to do.
Yeah, I'm a fan of Google Translate. If you're using, of course, if you're using a Chrome browser, Brave or something, you can get the plugins. But I also have found that Bing, it's built into the browser, so that actually works really well too. Where you can Google Translate not Google, sorry, Microsoft Translate. Yeah, Bing Translate. So
and Bing actually
use
has
that.
platforms like they have their search engine sitting in certain countries around the world. So you can actually open up, I know that they have one in France for sure, because I've used it. And it's funny because each search engine offers you different search results too. That's something that we always need to let people know, because you can do these, like the site search, you can do it on any search engine. You're not limited to Google. You're not limited to Bing. You can use it on any search engine, but everyone should be using different search engines for the same searches, because they will get
talk
different
about that a
results.
little bit. You teach that, and I really didn't realize it until we did it in your class, where okay, everybody open up our browser and you do this, and it's amazing, the results.
It's weird, right? But it is amazing because we'll do the same. We'll do one search in Google. We'll do another one in Bing. We could do another one in Yahoo. And we will actually get, or DuckDuckGo is another one. We'll get a feed of different hits. And what's interesting is the only reason I really learned the most about that is back in 2020, when there were things going on and there were things in the media saying, oh, certain platforms and certain search engines are limiting information. So that's what I did. I used the topics that they were doing and I tested all the search engines, and it was true. I was doing the same search for specific information, and I'd get the results from Google one way, and I'd get the results from Bing another, and DuckDuckGo another. And it was really interesting to see that there was censoring going on, but Bing and DuckDuckGo were not censoring.
Interesting.
At the time. Yeah.
Yeah. Is it, you have my go-to browser is Brave. I don't know if you have a go-to one.
I do have a go-to. I actually have 3 go-tos, and I use them all for different purposes because they all save. So I use Firefox specifically for anything I'm doing for my business. Like if I'm doing webmail, or I'm going to LinkedIn, and anything has to do with my company, legitimately, I use Firefox. I use Google Chrome for all of my investigations. anything, all the platforms I'm logging into with my sock puppets, my identities, that's all on Chrome. And then
Mm.
I have my CCleaner browser, which I use for personal. So I separate everything on my system by browser.
That's really, and you find different results, I would imagine, there too.
Yes, I do actually. And Brave is another good one. I tell people to use Brave. You can also use Opera. Canary is another version of Google browser. Microsoft Edge, that comes automatically with Windows. It's not one that I particularly like to use, but I have used it as a fourth option. So, because each browser separates everything, so it's always a good search method to keep things separate.
And let's talk a little bit about the type of information that we're looking for on these things. Of course, it would be nice if everybody was still posing with guns and drugs
I
and
know, right?
money and stolen equipment or whatever it was. They used to pose with
Post a video of them stealing people's corporate information.
yeah, no, not so much anymore. And for me, it's all about identification.
Mhm.
For the most part, I do find sometimes that it'll attach me to a location. It'll get me to their work. Maybe they have other employment opportunities. Certainly, their web of connections,
Yeah.
is always good. What else do you look for there?
Well, I love that you're doing that, but one of the key things that I'm always looking for is, because you and I are dealing with a lot of the same thing when they're staying completely anonymous, and
Yeah.
and so we're trying to identify them. A lot of times what I find is it's the usernames that they're hiding and
Mm,
that I accidentally find because I did a search on possibly the username that I know of from their main email address, and I'll go through some of my systems and run just that username, which then takes me to maybe a blog, or it takes me to another social platform that's not in the mainstream. And all of a sudden, that username is taking you to another username where they're actually, like in TikTok, people will have a username where it's tiktok.com/ and then their username. But when you go to the page, it reads different, and it reads @ and it's a totally different username. So what
interesting.
I'm looking for is to develop these secondary and third identities from the initial person. So connections, like you said, are the other key factor for me in identification, because that can bring verification. But I'm literally looking for those other usernames that will actually take me to all their identities that they like to use, because most of them are all using different, like 3 and 4 identities, so
Right.
to get away with their financial fraud or corporate espionage, whatever they might be doing.
Yeah, yeah. Do you think some of the mainstream ones are cutting down on the fake profiles and that kind of thing, or are they still counting them in their 2.8 billion daily active users? You
Well,
know,
it's funny that you bring that up after watching what Elon Musk went through and deciding whether he was going to buy with all the fake profiles. And I
right?
mean, I think that they say they're trying to weed them out, but I don't think they're weeding them out as much as they think they are. Does that make sense? I mean, you were part of Facebook, and you were definitely there during a time where they were really trying to stop
Yeah.
the identity profiles. And I know that
Yep.
Facebook was really working on that, but a lot of times it's really hard for them to do it. So I think there's a point where they're just kind of letting it go.
There's internal conflicts, within these social media companies, like like there is at Facebook, I'm sure. So that you have the people on the production side that want the more daily active users they have, the better the stock does,
Yeah.
if that's a thing. And then there's the enforcement side, or the moderation side, and we're looking at, well, cool story, bro, but that person's a fraudster and they keep
Yeah.
ripping people off.
Right.
So, we're going to we're going to take action on these profiles and these accounts to mitigate those kinds of risks. Because yeah, when I got there, I said, well, just where they're broadcasting this from, or
Yeah.
where they're signing on from, just go kill that IP address. They're like, oh
Exactly.
no, what if it's a internet cafe? I'm like, Well, you would know that because you would see
Exactly.
multiple sign-ons for like,
So
and
there's
then
some basic
you can
stuff
see
here.
the address. Go look at the address. Go Google Street View that. It was ridiculous. They can kill it. They know exactly. They can turn on automation and kill it, but it would
It's
kill
yeah.
hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of profiles. And
Yeah,
that's
I
why
see where you're going with
my
that.
feeling, they don't do it.
And yeah, you could be right. It is a shame because some of these accounts are obvious because they are actually stealing.
Yeah.
I mean, and
Yeah.
those ones should be shut down. But when it comes to identity accounts, there are those of us that like you and myself will create one just for the purpose of getting the
Sock
bad
puppet.
guy, so we can stop
Yeah.
them from doing the bad stuff. And
It's getting
so,
harder and harder to do that too.
it is. Well, everybody's using a VPN now on
Right.
my suggestion.
Right.
It's like everybody should use it, which makes our job more difficult. But we have other ways of finding them and identifying them. But yeah, going back to what we were first starting to talk about, and that's, the social media platforms are kind of limiting and turning it, like you said, I like the way you said it, turning it more into a PG-13. I think that's good in a lot of ways, but it does make our job harder, unfortunately. It's kind of a bummer.
They start deleting our evidence. That's
Mhm.
why
They
I
do.
needed that.
I know, right? So, well,
Yeah.
I'm really glad we were talking about this, though. I think it's important for people to be aware. But the TikTok thing, we'll see if it goes away. I think what they're saying is if you already have the app, you're still going to be able to keep it, but they're going to remove. They're talking about removing it from the App Store and iPhone or iOS, and not allowing people to download anymore. I don't know if that's the way it's going to play out, though. So we'll see.
Yeah. It's, there are creators out there and this is all they do. So I think what people were starting to freak out too when Elon Musk came in and took over Twitter and then started reporting how badly run Twitter was or is.
Yeah.
And I think I saw a real panic late last year from major news outlets that were like, hey, we might not be on Twitter anymore, so make sure you follow us on all of our other social media platforms. Or what's the dinosaur one? Mastodon.
My gosh!
Everybody switched to Mastodon, and like, hey, they're out there making their money. They're doing their hustle, whatever it is. Hey, get on them. I just am getting tired of having to switch.
I know, right?
So tired.
Well, some of the ones that are a little more active now, and they came about, Rumble really kind of took off as another video platform outside of YouTube. So that's actually a good one if you want an alternative. What was one of the other ones we talked about? I mean, Parler went away a long time ago, but there's Truth Social. That's another one that kind of came up as well after the Parler thing went away, and there's another one called Gab. So there's some other ones that are working their way of doing things without trying to censor information. So that's good. I prefer to see everything out there.
Yeah. I want to know everything. Yeah, but that's just my bias. Yeah,
I think it's part of our, it's part of us being Americans. We want to be able to, whether we like what we're hearing or seeing or reading or not, I think people should have the freedom to say it. So
yeah, access to information, right?
Yeah. Might educate us. What a thought.
Well, Sandra, it's been another fun talk with you, and I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your experience with us, as always. And what are you working on now? What can we leave the listeners with?
Oh, great. I will be doing a 2-hour learning lab at the RSA Cybersecurity Conference in San Francisco at the end of April. But in May, I have 2 of my 2-day OSINT trainings set up. I'm doing one of them in Marina del Rey, California on May 4th and 5th. And then I'm doing another one on May 18 and 19 in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. So those are my 2-day OSINT trainings. So they're, open registrations. I'd love for everybody from both the public and private sector to come. And then let's see what else we have coming up. We're going to hopefully be at DEF CON again. We'll be doing the Red Team Village.
Red Team Village, yeah.
Red Team Village. We'll be doing that, and we've submitted for a training for it as well. And we'll be at the Texas Cyber Summit DEF CON is in August. Texas Cyber Summit is at the end of September. We'll definitely be there as well. And those are the ones off the top of my head that I know that we're definitely going to be at. So hopefully I get to see you, Scott, at all of them.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely at GSX and hopefully at DEF CON. It's only 4 hours from our house, so might drive up there and check it out.
Oh, that's so great. Well, definitely GSX. I'll be there. I have submitted presentation. You have too. And we're hoping that our dual presentation together on corporate due diligence will actually get accepted.
And we'll talk about some of this stuff too.
Yes, we will.
That we've talked about. Yeah.
So it's
in more
exciting.
depth. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well,
Thanks,
for
Sandra.
having me. I love doing this with you. That's great.
Yeah, it was fun. Talk soon.
Okay, take care. Bye.
Bye.